The frozen mountain highways, where temperatures drop to 50 below and help is hundreds of miles away. Out here, truck drivers face more than just ice and snow. They encounter things that shouldn't exist. Figures on empty roads, voices from dead drivers, handprints forming in frost from inside locked cabs. These are 10 true stories from professional drivers who survived the unexplainable. This is the most disturbing true frozen mountain trucker horror stories. And every single one really happened. The Dalton Highway is no place for mercy. It's 414 miles of frozen hell cutting through the Alaskan wilderness. And in January, when the temperature drops to 40 below, you don't stop for anything. You keep your rig moving, your diesel warm, and your mind focused. I've been running this route for 12 years, hauling equipment to the North Slope oil fields. I've seen whiteouts that last for days, caribou herds that stop traffic for hours, and more stranded vehicles than I can count. But I've never seen anything like what happened that night. It was around 11 p.m. when I saw her. I was about 60 miles south of Coldfoot, the only truck on the road. The northern lights were dancing green and purple across the sky, casting strange shadows on the endless white landscape. That's when my headlights caught her. A woman standing beside a wrecked sedan, half buried in a snowbank. The car's front end was crumpled against a concrete mile marker. No other vehicles around. No tire tracks except my own. She was wearing a thin summer dress. No coat, no boots, just standing there in the killing cold, her arms wrapped around herself. My first thought was hypothermia. My second was that she'd be dead in minutes if I didn't help. I know the rules: don't stop, don't pick up strangers, keep moving. But I couldn't leave her there. I hit the brakes and pulled onto the shoulder. I grabbed my emergency blanket and jumped out, the cold hitting me like a physical blow. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" She didn't respond, didn't even look at me, just stood there, staring down the empty highway. Her skin was pale. Not just pale, but bloodless, with a bluish tint around her lips and fingertips. Her dark hair hung limp and wet against her shoulders. "Ma'am, you need to get in the truck. Now." I draped the blanket over her shoulders. She finally turned to look at me. Her eyes were completely empty, not shocked or afraid or relieved, just empty. Without a word, she walked past me toward my rig. I followed, my breath fogging in great clouds, my fingers already going numb despite my gloves. She climbed into the passenger seat with mechanical precision, sat perfectly straight, and stared through the windshield. I cranked the heat to maximum, the vents roaring as hot air blasted into the cab. "What happened? Where were you headed?" "Nothing. Not even a blink." I checked the wrecked sedan through my mirror. No bodies inside, no blood, just a crushed front end and shattered glass glittering under my taillights. I radioed it in to dispatch, giving them the mile marker and description. They told me to bring her to Coldfoot, where there's a small medical station. I put the rig in gear and started rolling. The woman never moved, never shivered, never spoke, just sat there like a mannequin while the miles crawled by. After about 20 minutes, I tried again. "Miss, are you okay? Do you need water? Are you hurt?" Her lips were moving. I leaned closer, straining to hear over the engine noise. Nothing, no sound at all, just her mouth forming silent words, over and over. Then I noticed something that made my stomach clench. Frost was forming on the inside of the passenger window. Not condensation, spreading in delicate crystalline patterns from where she sat. The cab was stifling hot. I was sweating, but the frost kept spreading, creeping across the glass like frozen fingers. I looked at the woman. Her skin was the same bluish pale. No fog from her breath. Nothing. My own breath was coming in visible clouds, even though the temperature gauge read 85 degrees. The heater was blasting, but the cold was coming from her. "Who are you?" My voice cracked. She turned her head, slowly, mechanically, and looked directly at me. Her eyes were frosted over, white with ice crystals. Her mouth opened, and a sound came out. Not words, but a low, rattling wheeze, like wind through a frozen culvert. I slammed on the brakes, the rig skidding before grinding to a stop. I turned to look at her fully. The seat was empty, just a wet spot shaped like a body, already freezing into a solid sheet of ice. The blanket I'd given her lay crumpled on the floor, frozen stiff. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my flashlight and checked the sleeper cab, the floor, everywhere. She was gone, vanished. But the frozen seat remained, and the frost on the window, and the temperature in the cab, now dropping rapidly despite the heater running full blast. I didn't sleep that night. I drove straight to Coldfoot and reported everything. They looked at me like I'd lost my mind. But I had proof, the dashcam. I pulled the footage right there at the station. The screen showed me climbing into the truck alone. It showed me talking to an empty passenger seat for 20 miles, adjusting the heater, asking questions, leaning toward nothing. But when I zoomed in on the frozen spot on the window, my blood turned to ice. There was a handprint pressed against the glass from the inside. Small, delicate, feminine. The fingers were spread wide, as if someone had been trying desperately to get out. But the really disturbing part? You could see the print of the palm, the individual finger pads, and in the center, tiny ice crystals had formed in the shape of two words, "Help me." The next morning, Alaska State Troopers found a woman's body in the wrecked sedan I'd passed. She'd been dead for 3 days, frozen solid behind the wheel. The car had gone off the road during a blizzard earlier that week. She died of hypothermia, trying to stay warm in a dead vehicle with no heat. Her name was Jennifer Hale, 34, a nurse traveling from Fairbanks to Deadhorse. She was wearing a summer dress, the same one I'd seen. And when they processed the scene, they found something that made the senior trooper pull me aside privately. Inside the frozen car, on the passenger window, there was a handprint. From the inside, pressed against the glass, the same size and shape as the one on my dashcam footage. And beneath it, scratched into the frost with a fingernail, 2 words, "Help me." The trooper asked me not to talk about it. Said it would complicate things, upset the family. But I see that handprint every time I close my eyes. I still run the Dalton Highway. It's my job, my livelihood. But now I never stop for hitchhikers. Not in summer. Not in winter. Not ever. Because I know the truth now. The cold doesn't just kill you on the Dalton Highway. Sometimes it keeps you. It holds you in that final moment of desperation, that last plea for help, and it replays it over and over, trapping your ghost in an endless loop of freezing, dying, and reaching out to the living who pass by but can never save you. 3 weeks ago, another driver reported picking up a woman in a summer dress near mile marker 60. He said she sat in his passenger seat for 20 miles, never speaking, never warming up. Then she vanished. He had the frozen handprint on his window too, the same 2 words. They don't investigate these reports anymore. There are too many. Every winter, Jennifer Hale tries to hitch a ride home. And every winter, she fails. Because she's already dead. She just doesn't know it yet. I've been hauling freight through the Canadian Rockies for 18 years. I know every mountain pass, every runaway lane, every treacherous downgrade between Calgary and Vancouver. Rogers Pass is the worst, 11,000 feet of elevation, avalanche zones on both sides, and weather that can turn from clear to whiteout in minutes. Most of the accidents happen there. Most of the deaths too. The locals have a saying, Rogers Pass doesn't forgive mistakes. I've always been careful. I've always respected the mountain. But in February of last year, Rogers Pass showed me something that shattered everything I thought I knew about that highway. It was 2 a.m. when I started the ascent. A winter storm had been battering the pass all day. Parks Canada had closed it twice already for avalanche control. They just reopened it with a high-risk warning. Travel at your own risk. Convoys recommended. Expect extreme conditions. I'd been waiting in Golden for 6 hours, and my delivery deadline was tight. I had to go. The snow was already falling hard when I started up the grade, fat flakes swirling in my headlights. Visibility dropped fast. First 100 yards, then 50, then barely the length of my trailer. My wipers were struggling. Ice was building up on my mirrors. The road disappeared into a wall of white. I slowed to a crawl, following the reflective markers on the shoulder. That's when I saw them, taillights ahead. 3 sets moving in perfect formation. 3 semis running in convoy, spaced about 50 yards apart. I'd never been so relieved. Following experienced drivers through a whiteout is the smart play. I fell in behind the last truck, matching their speed, keeping a safe distance. We climbed into the storm. For 2 hours, we drove in silence. I tried radioing them several times. Breaker, breaker, this is southbound hauler at the back of the convoy. Anybody copy? Nothing but static. I tried different channels. Nothing. Strange, but not impossible, the storm could be interfering with the signal. I focused on the taillights ahead, those steady red eyes cutting through the white. But then my GPS started acting strange. The route line was glitching, flickering, redrawing itself. According to the map, we were driving in circles, impossible on a mountain highway with no side roads. I tapped the screen. It reset, then showed the same thing. We'd passed the same section of highway 3 times. That couldn't be right. I checked my mile markers. We should have been near the summit by now. But the markers showed we'd only climbed 8 miles in 2 hours. At our speed, we should have covered at least 30. I tried the radio again. Lead truck, this is tail end. Are we going the right way? My GPS is showing. A burst of static cut me off, but beneath it, I heard something else. Voices. Faint, distorted, layered over each other. Men speaking, but the words were wrong, reversed, slowed down, inhuman. Then silence. The taillights ahead never wavered. The snow thinned suddenly, just for a moment. A gap in the storm. I could see the truck ahead of me clearly for the first time. My blood went cold. The trailer was ancient, rust-eaten. The paint was faded and peeling, the company logo barely visible. The license plate was caked in grime, but I could make out the numbers. ALB, 1987. Alberta plate. From 1987. That was 36 years ago. Plates don't last that long. That truck should have been scrapped decades ago. I looked at the truck ahead of that one. Same condition. Rusted. Decayed. And the lead truck. I could just barely see it through the swirling snow. Looked like it had been dragged from a junkyard. All 3 trucks were moving in perfect synchronization, but something was horribly wrong. I slammed on my brakes, my rig shuddering, and watched as the convoy pulled ahead. Then I noticed something that made my heart stop. There were no tire tracks in the fresh snow behind them. The road was smooth, untouched, pristine white. Just my tracks, cutting a single line through the virgin snow. The convoy left nothing. No, 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 no. I was hyperventilating, fogging the windshield. The blizzard closed in again, erasing the trucks from view. I sat there, engine idling, wipers scraping, trying to process what I'd just seen. Trucks without tire tracks. Impossible. I must have been mistaken. The storm, the exhaustion, the stress, I was seeing things. I had to be. I waited for the visibility to improve. 5 minutes. 10. The storm raged on. When it finally cleared enough to see, the convoy was gone. The road ahead was empty. I checked my mirrors. Empty behind me too. I was alone on a highway that stretched into darkness on both sides. I radioed dispatch. This is Unit 47, Rogers Pass. I've lost my convoy. Can you confirm other trucks in the area? The dispatcher sounded confused. Unit 47, we show you as the only vehicle on Rogers Pass. Highway's been closed for 6 hours. How did you get past the barricade? What? No, it was open. I've been following 3 trucks. -47. Highway closed at midnight. You need to turn around immediately. Search and rescue is en route. I looked at my odometer. I traveled 43 miles. I checked my GPS. It showed me 12 miles past the closed gate, past the barricades, in a section of highway that should have been empty, blocked off, impassable. Search and rescue found me 20 minutes later. They were baffled. The gate had been locked, the barricades in place. No tracks leading through except mine. They escorted me back down the mountain, and I told them everything. The lead rescuer, an old-timer named Frank, went silent. Then he pulled me aside at the base station. You saw them, he said quietly. The ghost convoy. I laughed. He didn't. February 16th, 1987. 3 trucks tried to cross Rogers Pass during a storm. Against protocol. They ignored the warnings. All 3 drivers died. 2 in an avalanche, 1 drove off the edge in the whiteout. They never found the trucks. The avalanche buried the first 2. The third one went into a ravine so deep we couldn't recover it. But every winter, drivers report the same thing. 3 trucks moving in formation. Old plates. No tire tracks. They lead you deeper into the storm, then disappear. That's impossible, I said. He shrugged. Rogers Pass doesn't follow the rules. The mountain takes what it wants. Those drivers died trying to make a deadline. Now they're still trying, still hauling, still running the pass. And sometimes they try to take others with them. You got lucky. You stopped. Most don't. We find them in the spring, off the edge, frozen solid. Their GPS logs show them following vehicles that don't exist. I quit long-haul work 3 months later. Couldn't shake it. The image of those decayed trucks, moving in perfect silence. The lack of tracks. The voices on the radio. But the worst part? A week after my encounter, I got my dashcam footage processed. I wanted proof. I wanted to show someone what I'd seen. The footage showed me driving alone through a whiteout. No taillights ahead. No convoy. Just me, crawling through the storm, talking to myself on the radio. But at the 2-hour mark, when the snow thinned just for 3 seconds, you can see something in the distance. 3 faint shapes, barely visible, moving through the white. And if you enhance the audio during my radio calls, you can hear them. 3 voices, overlapping, distorted. Follow us. Stay close. We'll get you through. We'll get you through. We'll get you through. Repeating. Forever. The ghost convoy is still running Rogers Pass. And they're always looking for one more truck to join them. S2.2. The Yukon Territory in winter is a place where civilization feels like a distant memory. You can drive for hours without seeing another soul. Just endless white wilderness punctuated by the occasional fuel stop or maintenance shack. The highway is a thin black line cutting through an ocean of snow and ice. And at night, when the temperature drops to 50 below, you learn real quick that your truck is the only thing keeping you alive. Stop too long and the cold will kill you. Keep moving and you might make it through. I was 3 days into a run from Whitehorse to Inuvik, hauling construction equipment for a mining operation. It was February, the dead of winter, and I was making good time despite the cold. My route took me along the Dempster Highway, one of the most isolated roads in North America. No towns, no services, just designated fuel stops every 100 miles or so, most of them unmanned. You pull up, swipe your card, pump your diesel, and get back on the road. Simple, efficient, lonely as hell. It was just past 2 a.m. when my fuel gauge dropped into the red zone. I'd been pushing it, trying to make it to Eagle Plains before stopping. But the cold makes your engine work harder, burns fuel faster. I had no choice. I pulled into an automated fuel station at kilometer marker 347. Just a single bright light pole, 2 pumps, and a small equipment shed. No buildings, no attendants, nothing but howling wind and darkness beyond the circle of light. As I pulled up to the pump, I noticed another truck on the far side of the station. Big rig, similar to mine, engine idling, lights on. The exhaust was billowing white in the frigid air. I felt a surge of relief. Another driver, another human being in this frozen wasteland. Maybe we could share road conditions, warn each other about any hazards ahead. I swiped my card and started fueling, the pump clicking slowly in the brutal cold. But something felt wrong. The other truck hadn't moved. The engine was running, but I couldn't see the driver. No movement in the cab. No one getting out to stretch or check their load. Just an idling truck with its lights on, sitting motionless in the dark. I finished fueling and decided to walk over. Professional courtesy. Make sure the guy was okay. The cold hit me like a sledgehammer the moment I left my cab. 53 below according to my thermometer. My breath crystallized instantly, and my exposed skin started burning within seconds. I approached the truck, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. "Hey, you all right in there?" No response. The engine rumbled steadily. I climbed up on the running board and looked through the driver's window. What I saw made my stomach drop into my boots. There was a man behind the wheel. His hands gripped the steering wheel in a death clutch. His eyes were wide open, staring straight ahead through the windshield. His beard was covered in thick frost. Ice crystals had formed on his eyebrows and eyelashes. His skin was gray-blue, the color of frozen meat. He was dead, completely, utterly frozen solid. But the engine was running. The heater was blasting. I could feel warmth radiating through the window. The dashboard lights were on. Everything was operational, except the driver had been dead for hours. Jesus Christ. I stumbled backward off the running board, nearly falling. My hands were shaking as I fumbled for my satellite phone. "No cell service out here, you need satellite." I dialed the RCMP emergency line, and it took 3 tries to get through. "This is Trucker at kilometer 347, Dempster Highway. I found a body. Driver's dead in his cab. Frozen. Send someone." The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional. "Copy that. We'll dispatch a unit. Can you identify the victim?" I climbed back up, forcing myself to look again, searching for ID. That's when I saw the fuel receipt stuck to his dashboard, held there with a magnet. I pulled it closer to read it. My blood turned to ice. The receipt was from this station, this pump. Time-stamped 1:47 a.m. That was 33 minutes ago. But this man was frozen solid. Rigor mortis had set in. The frost on his beard was thick, old. He'd been dead for hours, maybe days. "Dispatch, we've got a problem. This guy's fuel receipt says he pumped gas half an hour ago, but he's been dead way longer than that. Something's not right here." There was a pause. "Stand by." I waited in the howling wind, my flashlight beam shaking. The dead man stared through his windshield, unblinking, frost-covered. His truck idled on, exhaust pluming into the black sky. The dispatcher came back. "Sir, can you read me the receipt number?" I did. Another long pause. "Sir, that receipt is in our system. Card was charged at 1:47 a.m. tonight. Transaction went through normally." "That's impossible. This guy's been dead for hours. Look, I know what a frozen corpse looks like. He didn't die 30 minutes ago. Sir, remain at the scene. Officers are en route. ETA 45 minutes. I climbed down and went back to my truck, locking the doors. I wasn't staying out in that cold. But I kept my lights pointed at the dead man's truck, watching it through my windshield. The engine kept running. The lights stayed on. And the driver sat there, frozen hands on the wheel, going nowhere. I pulled up the fuel station's transaction history on my Fleet Card app. 2 transactions tonight. Mine at 2:08 a.m. and one at 1:47 a.m. Card registered to James Holloway, Alberta. The dead man's truck had Alberta plates. When the RCMP arrived, 2 officers in a heavy-duty SUV, they confirmed everything. James Holloway, 52, long-haul trucker from Edmonton, reported missing 3 days ago when he failed to check in with his dispatcher. The coroner arrived an hour later in a transport van. He examined the body in the cab and gave his preliminary assessment. He's been dead at least 8 hours, probably longer. Hypothermia. Looks like his heater failed, and he froze to death behind the wheel. "But his engine's running," I said. "His heater's working, and he pumped fuel 90 minutes ago." The coroner looked at me, then at the officers. "Engine's running now. Doesn't mean it was running when he died. Heater probably cut out, he froze, and maybe the engine cycled back on automatically. It happens." "What about the fuel receipt?" The senior RCMP officer pulled me aside. "That's the strange part. We checked the station's physical logs. Your card is the only one that was used tonight. His transaction shows in the digital system, but there's no record of the pump actually dispensing fuel. No mechanical log. It's like the charge went through, but no fuel was pumped." "How is that possible?" He shook his head. "System glitch. Maybe his card was charged for an earlier transaction that didn't process right away. We see it sometimes in remote areas, satellite delay on the card readers. The charge hits the system hours later. But that didn't explain what I saw. That didn't explain the receipt on his dashboard, fresh and crisp, with tonight's date and time. That didn't explain why his truck was running when he'd been dead for 8 hours. They loaded his body into the transport van. They towed his truck. They took my statement and let me go. But before I left, the younger officer pulled me aside. "This is the third one," he said quietly. "Third what?" "Third driver we found dead at this fuel stop. All in the last 2 years. All frozen behind the wheel. All with fuel receipts that don't match the timeline. All with engines running when they shouldn't be." "What are you saying?" He looked back at the fuel station, the single light pole casting its lonely circle of illumination in the vast darkness. "I'm saying this place is wrong. The old-timers won't stop here. They'd rather run on fumes to Eagle Plains than fuel up here. They say the cold is different at kilometer 347. Hungrier. And sometimes it takes drivers before their time. Records their last transaction and replays it. Over and over. We've had reports of trucks fueling here at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. Pumps running by themselves, receipts printing, but no one at the station. Just empty trucks with their engines running and no drivers. I left immediately. I didn't stop again until I reached Eagle Plains, and even then I kept my engine running the whole time I was inside the diner. I looked up James Holloway when I got home. He was a veteran driver, 26 years on the road. Experienced. Careful. He knew the Dempster Highway. He knew how to survive the cold. But something at kilometer 347 killed him anyway. Something that charged his card. Something that printed his receipt. Something that started his engine and turned on his heater after he was already frozen solid. I've driven past that fuel station a dozen times since then. Always during daylight. Never stopping. But twice, I've seen trucks there at night, idling, lights on, no drivers visible. Exhaust rising into the dark. And each time I've checked the fleet reports later. No one was supposed to be there. No transactions recorded. Just ghost trucks fueling up at a station that kills drivers and keeps them running. Trapped in their cabs. Forever trying to complete a journey that ended the moment they pulled off the highway. The cold doesn't just kill you at kilometer 347. Keeps you. And it makes you pump one last tank of fuel you'll never use. The Coquihalla Highway is British Columbia's main artery through the Cascade Mountains, and in winter, it's one of the most dangerous roads in Canada. The grades are steep, the weather is unpredictable, and avalanches are a constant threat. Every year, the highway closes multiple times for avalanche control. Explosives are used to trigger slides before they can bury the road. Every year, people die. And every winter, the ghosts of those who didn't make it are said to haunt the passes, trying to warn others away from the same fate. I didn't believe any of that supernatural nonsense. I'm a practical man. I've been hauling freight for 23 years, and I've learned that mountains are dangerous because of physics, gravity, momentum, snow load, temperature, not because of ghosts. But what happened to me on a February night in 2023 changed everything I thought I knew. I was northbound through the Coquihalla, hauling auto parts from Seattle to Kamloops. A major storm system had moved in that afternoon, dumping heavy snow across the mountain passes. Parks Canada had issued an avalanche warning. High risk, travel not recommended. But the highway was still open and I had a deadline. I'd driven through worse. I know my truck, I know my limits, and I know the road. I decided to risk it. By 9 p.m., I was climbing the grade toward the Great Bear snow shed, visibility dropping as the snow intensified. My wipers were working overtime, and I'd slowed to 40 kilometers per hour. The highway was deserted. Most drivers had pulled off to wait out the storm. Just me and the falling snow and the dark mountains on either side. Then my CB radio crackled to life. Southbound traffic. Don't stop. Keep moving. It's coming. The voice was male, strained, desperate. Heavy static distorted the words, but the urgency was unmistakable. I grabbed my mic. This is northbound hauler at kilometer 215. Who am I talking to? What's coming? The voice came back immediately, clearer now. Don't stop. Don't stop. Keep moving. It's coming right behind you. I checked my mirrors. Nothing but swirling snow and darkness. Copy that. Where are you? What's your 20? Right behind you. Keep moving. Don't stop. I looked again. My mirrors showed empty road. My own taillights reflecting red in the snow. No headlights behind me. No one there. Buddy, I don't see you. What are you driving? Don't stop. The voice was frantic now, almost screaming. Keep moving. It's coming. Get out of the slide zone. And then I heard it. A sound that made my blood freeze. A deep bass rumble that I felt in my chest more than heard. The mountain was groaning. I looked up through my driver's window at the slope above the highway. In the brief illumination of my running lights, I saw it. A massive wave of snow and ice breaking loose from the mountainside, cascading down through the trees, snapping them like toothpicks. An avalanche. Enormous. Devastating. And heading straight for the highway about a quarter-mile behind me. Oh God. Oh God. I slammed the accelerator, my rig surging forward, engine roaring. The rumble grew louder, shaking the cab, rattling the windows. I could see it in my mirrors now. A churning white wall of destruction rushing down the mountain, devouring everything in its path. The highway behind me disappeared under thousands of tons of snow and debris. Trees, rocks, ice, all of it pouring across the road, burying it completely. If I'd stopped, if I'd pulled over to wait out the storm, if I'd slowed down even a little, I would have been buried alive. The avalanche crossed the highway exactly where I'd been 2 minutes earlier. I kept my foot down, putting distance between myself and the slide, my heart hammering. The rumble faded. The snow settled. I was alive. The voice on the CB had saved my life. Thank you. I gasped into the mic. Thank you. You saved my life. What's your name? Static. I tried again. Come back, driver. Who are you? Where are you? Nothing. Just the hiss of dead air. I drove for another 10 kilometers and pulled into a chain-up area, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. I radioed ahead to the highway maintenance station at the Coquihalla summit. This is Unit 19, northbound at kilometer 228. There's been a major avalanche at kilometer 215. Roads completely blocked. And I need to report something else. There was another driver who warned me about the slide. He saved my life. I need to make sure he got clear. The maintenance supervisor responded immediately. Copy that, Unit 19. We've got sensors that detected the slide. Crews are en route. But sir, what do you mean another driver? We show you as the only northbound vehicle in that section. Highway's been empty for the last 2 hours except for you. No, that's not possible. I was talking to him on CB. He said he was right behind me. He warned me to keep moving. Sir, our traffic cameras show only your truck. No other vehicles northbound or southbound in that area. You were alone. I pulled up my dashcam footage right there, my hands still trembling. I rewound to the moment the voice first came through. The footage showed my truck, alone on the highway. No headlights behind me, no other vehicles anywhere. Just me, crawling through the snow, while that desperate voice crackled over the CB. Don't stop. Keep moving. It's coming. The maintenance supervisor told me to wait for an RCMP escort through the rest of the pass. When they arrived 40 minutes later, the officer took my statement. I told him everything, the voice, the warning, the avalanche, the fact that no one else was supposed to be on the highway. He listened without expression, then asked me a question that made my skin crawl. Did the voice tell you his name? No. He just kept saying to keep moving. Did he sound strange? Like he was far away? Or like the transmission was old? I thought about it. Yeah, the static was bad. And his voice had this weird quality like an old recording. Why? The officer sighed and looked up at the dark mountains. Because you're not the first person to report this. We've had at least a dozen incidents over the last 20 years. Drivers who report hearing a warning voice on CB right before an avalanche. Always the same message. Don't stop. Keep moving. It's coming. And every single time, the driver survives because they listen. But we never find the source of the transmission. No other trucks in the area. No base stations. Nothing. You're telling me I was warned by a ghost? I'm telling you that in 2003, a driver named Ray Hollins was killed in an avalanche at kilometer 217. He was trying to warn other drivers over his CB when the slide hit. His last transmission was recorded by highway maintenance. Don't stop. Keep moving. It's coming. His truck was buried under 40 feet of snow. They didn't recover his body for 3 months. And ever since then, drivers report hearing his voice right before avalanches hit. He's still trying to warn people, still trying to save lives. I sat there in my cab, staring at the dark windshield, trying to process what he'd told me. That's impossible. The officer shrugged. Maybe, but you're alive. And that avalanche would have killed you if you'd stopped. Something warned you. Someone warned you. Whether you believe it's Ray Hollins or not doesn't change the fact that you heard a voice that shouldn't exist, and it saved your life. They escorted me through the pass that night, and I completed my delivery the next morning. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I went home and researched Ray Hollins, found his obituary, found news articles about the 2003 avalanche, found a recording of his final CB transmission, archived on a trucker memorial website. I listened to it, and my blood turned to ice. It was the same voice, the exact same voice I'd heard on my CB that night, the same cadence, the same desperate urgency, the same words, "Don't stop, keep moving, it's coming." I've driven the Coquihalla dozens of times since then. Every time I go through kilometer 215 to 217, I keep my CB on. And twice late at night during storm conditions, I've heard him again. Just a few words. Faint, distant. Stay safe. Keep moving. I always respond. Thank you, Ray. I hear you. I'm moving. I don't know if he hears me. I don't know if he knows he's dead. But I know he's still out there, still monitoring the CB, still trying to save drivers from the same fate that took him. The mountains of British Columbia are unforgiving. But sometimes, the ghosts of those who died there are more merciful than the mountains themselves. And sometimes, the dead protect the living in ways we'll never understand. I owe my life to a man who's been dead for 20 years, and I'll never forget his voice. Montana's Beartooth Pass is one of the most spectacular and treacherous highways in America. It climbs to nearly 11,000 feet, winding through alpine wilderness with sheer drops and hairpin turns. In summer, it's breathtaking. In winter, it's deadly. The pass officially closes from October through May, but sometimes late-season storms trap drivers who gamble on an early crossing. I've hauled through Beartooth for 15 years, and I know better than to take chances with mountain weather. But in April of 2022, I made a decision that still haunts me. I was running a high-priority load of medical equipment from Billings to Cody, Wyoming. The pass had just opened after a long winter closure, but a late-season storm was forecasting heavy snow for that evening. My dispatcher told me to wait. I looked at the weather radar and thought I could make it through before the storm hit. I was wrong. By 6 p.m., I was halfway through the pass when the snow started. Light at first, then heavy, then blinding. Visibility dropped to 0 within minutes. I slowed to a crawl, following the edgeline markers, praying I wouldn't slide off the edge. The road was narrow, winding, with no guardrails in some sections. Just a sheer drop into darkness. I was about 5 miles from the summit when I saw smoke rising above the tree line to my right. It was faint at first, gray against the white snow and darkening sky. Then I saw the source. A cabin tucked back in the trees, maybe 100 yards off the highway. Smoke was rising from a chimney. Lights flickered in the windows. Strange. This was wilderness area federal land. There shouldn't be any cabins here. No private property. No buildings except for the occasional Park Service maintenance shed. But there it was, a small log cabin with smoke coming from its chimney and lights burning inside. I stopped my rig and considered my options. The storm was getting worse. I had maybe 30 minutes of visibility left before it became impossible to drive. But something about that cabin bothered me. Smoke meant people. People in a wilderness area during a storm. Maybe they needed help. Maybe they had better weather information than I did. professional instinct kicked in, check on them, make sure they're okay, then get back on the road. I grabbed my flashlight and emergency pack and climbed down from the cab. The cold was brutal and the wind was picking up. I trudged through knee-deep snow toward the cabin, my flashlight beam cutting through the falling flakes. As I got closer, I could see the cabin more clearly. It was old, really old. The logs were weathered and cracked. The windows were dark except for a faint orange glow, like firelight. The door was wooden, hand-carved, with a simple iron handle. Smoke continued to rise from the stone chimney. I knocked on the door. "Hello? Anyone home? I'm a trucker. Just checking if you need help." No answer. I knocked again, louder. Then I heard it. A child's voice from inside, high-pitched and thin. "Come in. We're cold." My stomach tightened. "Kids, out here, in a storm." I tried the door. It opened easily, creaking on old hinges. The interior was dim, lit only by a dying fire in a stone fireplace. And sitting on the floor in front of the fire were 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, maybe between 6 and 10 years old. They were wearing thin clothes, old-fashioned looking, and they were shivering. "Jesus, kids, where are your parents?" They looked at me with wide, hollow eyes. The girl spoke first. "They're sleeping. They won't wake up." She pointed toward a doorway at the back of the cabin, leading to what looked like a bedroom. My instincts screamed that something was very wrong. "Stay here. Stay by the fire. I'll check on them." I walked to the bedroom, my flashlight cutting through the gloom. The smell hit me first. Decay, rot, old death. I pushed the door open. 2 adults were lying in a bed, covered by a ratty blanket. They were frozen solid, completely preserved by the cold. Dead for weeks, maybe months. Their skin was gray-blue, their eyes closed, their mouths open in silent screams. I stumbled backward, my flashlight dropping, my breath coming in gasps. "Oh God! Oh God!" I turned to run back to the main room to grab the kids and get them out of there, to call for help. But when I reached the fireplace, the kids were gone. Vanished. Just 3 sets of wet footprints on the wooden floor, leading from where they'd been sitting toward the fire. The footprints stopped at the hearth. Nothing beyond. No tracks leading to the door. No sign of where they'd gone. I spun around, my flashlight sweeping the cabin. "Kids, where are you?" Silence. The fire crackled weakly. The wind howled outside. And then I saw something that made my blood freeze. On the wall above the fireplace, someone had carved names into the wood. Crude, uneven letters. Sarah Mills, age 8. Michael Mills, age 10. Jason Mills, age 6. Died April 15, 1996. I ran. I don't remember leaving the cabin. I don't remember getting back to my truck. I just remember slamming the door, locking it, grabbing my satellite phone with shaking hands, and calling 911. "This is a trucker on Beartooth Pass, mile marker 47. I found bodies. 2 adults, dead for weeks. And there were kids, but they vanished. Send someone. Please send someone." The Park Service arrived 90 minutes later, along with county sheriffs. They found the cabin exactly where I said it would be. They found the bodies, Sarah and Tom Mills, reported missing in April 1996 after their car broke down during a late-season storm. Tom had tried to walk for help, but never made it. Sarah and the kids had stayed in an old hunting cabin, waiting for rescue. They froze to death when their fire went out. All 5 bodies were recovered. The cabin was demolished in 1998, deemed unsafe and too remote to maintain. But I saw it. I walked inside. I talked to those kids. I saw their footprints. The lead investigator pulled me aside. "You're not the first," he said quietly. "Every few years, someone reports seeing the Mills cabin, seeing smoke, seeing the kids, always during a storm, always in April. The cabin's been gone for 26 years, but it still appears. And the kids are still trying to get warm, still waiting for their parents to wake up. How is that possible? It's not. But Beartooth doesn't care about possible. People die up here. They freeze. They get lost. And sometimes they don't leave. They just replay their last moments over and over, trapped in the cold and the dark, waiting for help that never comes. I quit running Beartooth Pass. I take the long way around now, even if it adds 6 hours to my route. Because I can't stop thinking about those kids, sitting by that dying fire, shivering in their thin clothes, waiting for their parents to wake up. I can't stop seeing their footprints, stopping at the hearth going nowhere. And I can't stop wondering, if I'd stayed longer, would they have asked me to add more wood to the fire? Would they have asked me to wake their parents? Would they have realized they were already dead? The cold doesn't just kill you on Beartooth Pass. It traps you in your final moments. And it makes you live them forever, confused and scared, unable to understand why no one can help you, why no one can save you, why you're so cold, and why the fire won't warm you, and why your parents won't wake up no matter how much you shake them. I heard those kids' voices. I saw their faces, and I'll carry that guilt for the rest of my life. The guilt of leaving them there, still cold, still waiting, still trapped in a cabin that doesn't exist anymore, still dying over and over in the spring snow of 1996. The Trans-Canada Highway through British Columbia is a ribbon of asphalt that winds through some of the most beautiful and dangerous terrain in North America. In winter, black ice is the silent killer. Invisible patches of frozen road surface that send vehicles spinning out of control without warning. I've driven this highway for 20 years, and I've seen more accidents than I can count. Twisted metal, shattered glass, bodies covered with tarps. But I've never seen anything like what happened to me near Revelstoke in January of 2023. It was 3 a.m., and I was eastbound with a load of furniture heading to Calgary. The temperature had dropped to -20, and the highway was deserted. No traffic, no other trucks, just me and the road and the dark mountains on either side. I was about 15 kilometers west of Revelstoke when I hit the black ice. My rig started sliding before I even realized what was happening. The steering wheel spun uselessly in my hands. The trailer swung out, jackknifing. I was doing a full 360-degree spin, the world rotating around me in slow motion, headlights, darkness, guardrail, darkness, headlights again. When I finally stopped, I was facing backward on the highway, my trailer inches from the guardrail and a 100-foot drop into the canyon below. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would burst. I sat there for a full minute, hands shaking, trying to calm down. I'd come within inches of going over the edge, inches from death. When I finally trusted my legs to work, I grabbed my flashlight and emergency triangles and climbed out to assess the damage. The cold hit me like a punch, stealing my breath. I walked around my rig, checking the trailer, the coupling, the tires. Everything looked intact. Lucky, impossibly lucky. That's when I saw him. A figure standing in the middle of the highway about 50 yards away, facing away from me. He was wearing a reflective safety vest, the kind highway workers wear, orange and yellow with reflective stripes that caught my flashlight beam. My first thought was relief, highway maintenance, someone who could help, someone who could radio for assistance. I waved my flashlight and shouted, "Hey, I need help." I spun out on black ice. The figure didn't move, didn't turn around, just stood there in the middle of the road, perfectly still. I shouted again, louder, "Can you hear me?" Nothing. The wind howled through the canyon, and the figure remained motionless. Something about his posture was wrong, too stiff, too rigid. I started walking toward him, my boots crunching on the frozen road surface. "Sir, are you okay?" As I got closer, I could see more details. His vest was torn, shredded in places. Dark stains covered the back. Not dirt, but something wet and glistening in my flashlight beam. His pants were torn too, hanging in strips. And his stance, his legs were bent at odd angles, like his knees didn't work right. 20 yards away now. "Sir, if you're injured, I can call for help." He turned around. I will never forget what I saw. His face was gone. Not damaged, not injured, gone. Where his features should have been, there was just raw, frozen meat, exposed muscle and bone, frost-covered and glistening. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just a horror movie nightmare of red and white tissue, frozen solid. His vest was soaked with old blood, and as he turned, I could see that his entire front was torn open, ribs visible through the shredded clothing. I screamed. I don't remember the sound leaving my throat, but I must have, because my voice was hoarse afterward. I stumbled backward, my flashlight dropping, my legs tangling. The figure took a step toward me, then another. His movements were wrong, jerky, uncoordinated, like a puppet with broken strings. I turned and ran, slipping on the ice, falling, scrambling back to my feet. I could hear footsteps behind me. Slow, dragging, but persistent. I reached my truck and threw myself into the cab, slamming the door and hitting the lock. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life and I looked in my mirror. He was standing right behind my trailer, watching me. No face, just that frozen horror where a face should be. His arms hung at his sides, and dark liquid dripped from his fingertips onto the white ice, leaving black stains. I didn't care that I was facing the wrong way. I didn't care about traffic or protocol or safety. I put the truck in gear and drove. Backward at first, then I found a wide spot and managed to turn around. When I looked in my mirrors again, he was gone. The road behind me was empty, just black ice and darkness and the faint marks where my tires had spun out. I didn't stop until I reached the RCMP station in Revelstoke. I burst through the door, incoherent, babbling about the figure on the highway, the missing face, the blood. The officer on duty listened patiently, then called his supervisor. They sat me down, gave me coffee, and let me tell the whole story. When I finished, the supervisor exchanged a look with the other officer that I couldn't read. "Sir, what exactly did this person look like?" I described him, the reflective vest, the torn clothing, the missing face, the blood. The supervisor pulled out a file folder and slid a photograph across the desk. "Is this the vest?" It was a photo of a reflective safety vest, orange and yellow, with specific reflective stripe patterns. It looked exactly like what I'd seen. "Yes, that's it. Exactly like that." The supervisor leaned back in his chair. In 2012, a highway maintenance worker named Derek Olson was killed on that stretch of highway. He was setting up cones for an ice-clearing operation when a semi lost control on black ice. Hit him at 80 kilometers an hour. Dragged him almost a quarter mile before the driver even realized what happened. When they found Derek's body, his face was gone, scraped off on the pavement, and his vest looked exactly like you described. Torn, shredded, soaked in blood. My coffee cup was shaking in my hands. "You're telling me I saw a ghost?" "I'm telling you that you're the 14th driver to report seeing Derek Olson on that stretch of highway. Always at night, always in winter, always near kilometer marker 37, where he died. And every single driver who sees him reports the same thing. He's standing in the middle of the road, facing away. When he turns around, his face is gone. And then he walks toward them. Why? What does he want?" The supervisor shrugged. "We don't know. Maybe he's trying to warn drivers about the black ice. Maybe he's just trapped there, replaying his death. Or maybe he's angry. Angry that no one stopped. Angry that the driver who hit him didn't even realize it until it was too late." Derek was 28 years old. He had a wife and a baby daughter. He was just doing his job, trying to make the highway safe. And he got killed for it. I stayed in Revelstoke that night, too shaken to drive. The next morning, I went back to the site where I'd spun out. In daylight, it looked ordinary, just a curve in the highway with a guardrail and a view of the mountains. But there were black stains on the ice where I'd seen him standing. Old stains, faded, but unmistakable. And when I looked closer, I found scratches in the ice, long, deep gouges, like someone had been clawing at the frozen surface. For parallel lines, fingernail marks, leading from the center of the road toward the shoulder, as if someone had been dragged. I took photographs. I documented everything. And when I got home, I did more research. I found Derek Olson's obituary, found news articles about the accident, found an interview with the truck driver who'd hit him, a man named Paul Richardson, who said he never saw Derek, never felt the impact. Didn't know anything had happened until police pulled him over 15 kilometers down the road. Derek's body had been wedged under the trailer, dragged along the highway, his vest caught on the undercarriage. When they finally extracted him, the pavement had scraped his face down to the skull. But here's the part that made my blood run cold. Paul Richardson died in 2015. Car accident. He lost control on black ice, on the same stretch of highway where he'd killed Derek Olson. His car went through the guardrail and plunged into the canyon. He was alone. No witnesses. But the accident reconstruction team found something strange. Richardson's car had swerved violently before going off the road, as if he'd been trying to avoid something in his lane. But the highway was empty. No other vehicles. No animals. Nothing that could explain why he'd swerved so hard. One of the investigators told a local reporter, off the record, that when they pulled Richardson's body from the wreckage, his face was frozen in an expression of absolute terror, and clutched in his hand was a scrap of reflective fabric. Orange and yellow, the same kind Derek Olson had been wearing when he died. The fabric was never explained. It wasn't from Richardson's clothing. It wasn't from his vehicle. It appeared in the official evidence log, then disappeared before the case closed. I've driven past kilometer marker 37 dozens of times since that night. Always during daylight, never at night, never in winter, because I know Derek Olson is still there, standing in the middle of the road where he died, waiting for drivers to see him, waiting for someone to stop, waiting for someone to acknowledge what happened to him. And I think that when Paul Richardson drove past that spot in 2015, Derek finally got his revenge. Finally made someone pay for taking his life, for dragging him a quarter mile, for not even noticing he was dead. I still have nightmares about that faceless figure turning around, about the raw, frozen meat where his face should be, about the black liquid dripping from his fingertips. And sometimes late at night I wonder, if I'd stayed, if I hadn't run, would he have hurt me? Or was he just trying to warn me about the black ice? Was he trying to save me from the same fate that took him? I'll never know, but I carry his photograph in my wallet now. Derek Olson, 28 years old, smiling in his highway maintenance uniform. I carry it to remember that every stretch of road has a history. Every accident leaves a mark. And sometimes the dead don't leave. They stay right where they fell, waiting for someone to see them, waiting for someone to remember. Northern Saskatchewan in February is as close to the end of the world as you can get without leaving Canada. Endless boreal forest, frozen lakes, and highways that stretch for hundreds of kilometers without a town or gas station. The population drops to nearly zero, and the temperatures regularly hit -40. I've been running freight through this region for 16 years, hauling supplies to remote mining operations and indigenous communities. This lonely work, dangerous work, but it pays well. And I've learned to handle the isolation, the cold, and the long nights alone on empty roads. But what happened at the rest stop near Wollaston Lake changed everything I thought I knew about being alone. It was 3 a.m., and I'd been driving for 11 hours straight. My eyes were burning, my back was aching, and I needed to stop for a mandatory rest break. The highway was empty. I hadn't seen another vehicle in over 2 hours. Up ahead, I saw the familiar blue sign indicating a rest area. Nothing fancy, just a gravel turnout with a picnic shelter, an outhouse, and a garbage bin. I pulled in, shut down the engine, and sat in the sudden silence. The cold seeped in immediately. Even with the engine off for just 30 seconds, I could feel the temperature dropping inside the cab. -43 according to my thermometer. I wasn't getting out unless absolutely necessary. I turned on my dome light and pulled out my logbook, filling in the required information: current time, location, odometer reading. That's when I heard it. 3 slow knocks on the wall of my sleeper cab. Knock, knock, knock. I froze, pen hovering over the page. The sound was deliberate, measured, impossible to mistake for anything else. Something or someone had knocked on my truck. I listened. Silence. Just the creak of metal contracting in the cold and the whisper of wind outside. Maybe it was ice falling from a tree branch. Maybe it was the truck settling. I went back to my logbook. Then it happened again. Knock, knock, knock. Same rhythm. Same location, right behind my head, on the other side of the thin aluminum wall. Hello! My voice sounded small in the confined space. No response. I grabbed my flashlight and leaned over to look through the sleeper cab window. The glass was already frosted over, but I could make out the empty rest area outside. No vehicles, no people, nothing but snow and shadows. I wiped the frost away and looked again. Still nothing. My breath fogged the glass immediately, but in that brief moment of clarity, I saw only emptiness. I was about to dismiss it when the knocking came again. Louder this time, more insistent. Knock, knock, knock. And then a voice, muffled but audible. Let me in. I'm freezing. Every hair on my body stood up. Someone was outside my truck. In minus 43-degree weather. At 3 a.m. At a rest stop in the middle of nowhere. Who's there? I called out. I'm cold. Please, let me in. It was a man's voice, rough and desperate. I looked through the window again. Still nobody visible. Where are you? I can't see you. I'm right here, at your door. Please open it. I'm freezing. I looked at my driver's door. The handle wasn't moving. Nobody was there. But the voice had definitely come from that direction. Step back where I can see you, I shouted. I'm not opening the door until I can see you. Let me in. The voice had changed. Deeper now, angry, demanding. The knocking started again, but this time it was pounding. Boom, boom, boom. The whole truck was shaking. My logbook fell off the dashboard. My coffee mug tipped over. The pounding continued, getting louder and more violent, as if someone was slamming their fists against the sleeper cab wall with inhuman strength. Stop! I'm calling the police. I fumbled for my satellite phone, my hands shaking. The pounding continued. Boom, boom, boom. I could see the aluminum wall flexing inward with each impact. Then I saw something that made my heart stop. The passenger window, the one that looked into the sleeper cab, was frosting over from the inside. Not from my breath, from something else. The frost was spreading in a pattern, like fingers drawing on glass. And as I watched, a handprint formed in the frost. A perfect handprint, pressed against the window from inside the cab. But I was alone, couldn't breathe. I stared at that handprint, at the 5 distinct fingers pressed against the glass, and I knew with absolute certainty that I was not alone in my truck. Something was in there with me, something that had been knocking from the outside but was somehow also inside. The pounding stopped. Complete silence. Then the voice again, but this time it came from behind me, from inside the sleeper cab. Why won't you let me in? I screamed. I don't remember what I said, but I know I screamed. I threw open the driver's door and jumped out into the killing cold, not caring about frostbite or hypothermia or anything except getting away from that voice, that handprint, that impossible presence in my cab. The cold hit me like a sledgehammer, and I ran toward the outhouse, the only structure in the rest area, my boots slipping on the ice. I pulled out my satellite phone and dialed 911 with numb fingers. It took 3 tries to hit the right buttons. This is a trucker at Wollaston Lake Rest Area. Someone's attacking my truck. I need help. Now. The dispatcher was calm, professional. Sir, what do you mean someone's attacking your truck? Are they armed? I don't know. They were pounding on it, screaming to be let in. But I think they're inside now. I saw a handprint on my window from the inside. Please, send someone. Sir, are you in a safe location? I'm in the outhouse. It's the only building here. Stay there. We're dispatching RCMP. They're 45 minutes away. Do not go back to your truck. I crouched in that freezing outhouse, my teeth chattering, my body already going numb from the cold. 45 minutes. I'd be dead from hypothermia in 45 minutes. But I couldn't go back to the truck. Not with that thing inside. 20 minutes passed. 30. I was losing feeling in my fingers and toes. My thinking was getting fuzzy, the first sign of hypothermia. I had to risk it. I had to get back to the truck, start the engine, get warm. I stumbled out of the outhouse and looked at my rig. It sat there in the darkness, silent and still, exhaust no longer rising from the stacks. Normal, unthreatening. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe the isolation and exhaustion had gotten to me. I approached slowly, flashlight raised. The truck looked undamaged. No dents, no marks. I circled it completely, checking every panel. Nothing. I climbed up to the driver's door and looked through the window into the sleeper cab. Empty. Just my blankets and bags and personal items. The handprint on the window was gone. Melted or maybe never there. I was shaking from cold and fear, but I had no choice. I opened the door and climbed in. The cab was freezing. I'd been outside for almost 40 minutes. I started the engine and cranked the heat. As the cab warmed up, I checked every inch of the interior. Nothing out of place. Nothing missing. No sign that anyone or anything had been inside. I was starting to think I'd had some kind of breakdown when I noticed something on the outside of my sleeper cab wall, the part one couldn't see from the driver's seat. I got out again and walked around. Then I saw them. Scratches. Deep, gouged scratches in the aluminum, running in parallel lines. For lines close together, like claw marks or fingernails. They covered a 2-foot section of the wall, right where I'd heard the knocking. Some scratches were so deep they'd gone through the paint down to bare metal. And they were fresh, bright metal showing no oxidation yet. Something had been clawing at my truck with desperate, violent force. The RCMP arrived 30 minutes later, 2 officers in a heavy-duty SUV. They examined the scratches, took photographs, and searched the rest area. Nothing. No footprints except mine. No tire tracks except mine. No evidence anyone else had been there. But the scratches were real. Undeniable. One officer, an older man named Constable Morrison, pulled me aside. "Has this rest stop been weird before?" "No, first time I've stopped here." He nodded slowly. "We've had reports. Not many, but enough. Drivers hear knocking. Hear voices asking to be let in. Some see handprints. Some see shadows. No one's been hurt, but everyone leaves shaken. And we always find the scratches." "What's doing it?" Morrison looked at the outhouse, then back at me. 3 years ago, we found a body in that outhouse. A drifter. He'd taken shelter during a blizzard, but the door froze shut. He couldn't get out. He died trying to claw his way through the door. When we found him, his fingernails were torn off, and his hands were bloody from scratching. He'd been dead for 3 days. I felt sick. "You think that's who was knocking on my truck?" "I think this rest stop is cursed. I think that man is still here, still trying to get someone to open the door, still freezing to death. And I think he gets confused. Sometimes he's trying to get out of the outhouse, sometimes he's trying to get into warm vehicles. But he's desperate, and he's angry, and he doesn't understand that he's already dead." I left immediately. I didn't file a report. I didn't write it up. I just drove straight through to my destination without stopping. But I've been back to that rest area since, always during daylight, never at night. The outhouse is still there, door hanging open, interior visible. And on the inside of that door, there are scratches. Hundreds of deep, desperate scratches, concentrated around the handle area, where someone tried to claw their way out. The wood is gouged down to splinters in some places. You can see where fingernails broke off and embedded in the wood. I won't stop at that rest area anymore. I don't care if I'm falling asleep at the wheel or if my logbook requires a break. I'll drive past and stop somewhere else, anywhere else. Because I know the truth now. That man is still in the outhouse, still trapped, still dying of cold and desperation. And when drivers stop at that rest area, he tries to get warm. He tries to get help. He doesn't understand that he's a ghost, that he's been dead for years, that no door will ever open for him again. All he knows is that he's cold and someone needs to let him in. And if you listen to his knocking, if you hear his voice, if you see his handprint forming in the frost, you'll never forget it. You'll carry that desperate plea with you forever. "Let me in. I'm freezing." But you can't let him in, because he's not looking for warmth anymore. He's looking for company. And if you open that door, you'll find out what it's like to freeze to death. Over and over. Forever. The Rocky Mountains of British Columbia are beautiful in photographs and deadly in person, especially in winter. The highways that cut through these peaks are engineering marvels, carved into cliff faces, suspended over valleys, winding through passes that see avalanches, rock slides, and 100-foot snowdrifts. Kicking Horse Pass is one of the most notorious. It's a long, steep downgrade on the Trans-Canada Highway with sharp curves, limited runaway lanes, and a history of fatal accidents. Every truck driver who runs this route knows the danger. Every driver respects the mountain, and every driver knows the story of Eddie Morrison. I'd heard the legend before I ever drove the pass. Every trucker in Western Canada has. Eddie Morrison was a veteran hauler who ran the Rockies for 30 years. In 1979, during a winter storm, Eddie's brakes failed on the Kicking Horse downgrade. He radioed for help, screaming that he couldn't stop, that his speed was increasing, that he couldn't see a runaway lane. His last transmission was a desperate plea, then a crunch, then static. Search teams never found his truck. The canyon is deep, over 1,000 feet in some places, and the wreckage was likely buried by snow and debris. Eddie Morrison disappeared into the mountains, and his body was never recovered. But here's the thing about ghost stories. I never believed them. I thought they were just campfire tales, ways for old-timers to spook rookies. Until February 14, 2023, when I drove Kicking Horse Pass and heard Eddie Morrison's voice with my own ears. I was westbound with a load of mining equipment, heading from Calgary to Vancouver. The weather was clear, cold, and perfect for mountain driving. I'd made this run 100 times. I knew every curve, every grade, every runaway lane. I wasn't worried. I started the descent around 10 p.m., engine brake engaged, transmission in low gear, speed controlled. Everything by the book. That's when my CB radio crackled to life. Breaker, breaker. This is Eddie eastbound on Kicking Horse. My brakes are gone. I repeat, my brakes are gone. Speed increasing. I can't stop. Can anyone hear me? The voice was panicked, desperate, cutting through heavy static. My first thought was that another driver was in trouble. I grabbed my mic. This is westbound hauler at kilometer 18. I copy you, Eddie. Where are you? What's your 20? I'm on the downgrade. I can't see the runaway lane. It's too dark. I'm going too fast. Oh God, I'm going to die. His voice was raw with terror. Eddie, listen to me. Stay calm. There's a runaway lane at kilometer 15. It's on your right. Gravel ramp. You'll see the signs. I don't see it. I don't see anything. Just darkness. I'm at 80 kilometers now. I can't slow down. I looked in my mirrors, searching for headlights behind me. Nothing. The highway was empty. Eddie, where exactly are you? I'm on the pass right now. I don't see your truck. I'm right behind you. Can't you see me? I'm flashing my lights. I checked again. Empty road. No headlights. No truck. Just my own taillights reflecting red on the snowbanks. Eddie, I don't see you. Are you sure you're on Kicking Horse? I'm right here. Help me. Please help me. Then I heard it. A horrible crunching sound. Metal tearing, glass shattering. A scream. Then static. The CB went dead. I sat there, hands gripping the wheel, heart pounding. What the hell had just happened? I grabbed the mic again. Eddie? Come back. Eddie, are you there? Nothing. Just the hiss of empty frequency. I pulled into a chain-up area at the bottom of the pass and immediately called 911. This is a trucker on Kicking Horse Pass. I just heard a distress call on CB. Driver named Eddie said his brakes failed. I heard him crash. You need to send search and rescue. Now. The dispatcher took my information and promised to send units. I waited there for 45 minutes until RCMP arrived. I told them everything. The CB call, the desperate voice, the crash I'd heard. They searched the pass. Nothing. No crashed truck. No wreckage. No Eddie. The senior officer came back to my truck. Sir, we've checked the entire pass. No accidents. No vehicles off the road. No debris. Are you sure you heard what you think you heard? I know what I heard. A driver in distress. He said his brakes failed. He crashed. I heard it. The officer looked uncomfortable. What was the driver's name again? Eddie. He said his name was Eddie. The officer exchanged a look with his partner. Sir, did you say Eddie? Yes. Why? He pulled out his phone and showed me a photograph. It was an old picture, faded and grainy, showing a man standing next to a semi-truck. The truck was ancient, 1970s era. Long hood, chrome bumper. The man was in his 40s, wearing a trucker cap and a plaid jacket, smiling at the camera. Is this the voice you heard? I stared at the photograph. I don't know. I never saw him. I only heard his voice on the CB. This is Eddie Morrison. He died in 1979. Brake failure on Kicking Horse Pass. His truck went off the road and into the canyon. We never recovered the body or the vehicle. And for the last 44 years, drivers have reported hearing his distress call on CB. Always the same message. Always the same panic. Always ending with a crash. I felt cold spread through my chest. That's impossible. I heard him. He was talking to me. He responded to my voice. Sir, did he? Or did he just keep repeating the same things? Think back. Did he actually answer your questions? Or was he just saying the same lines over and over? I thought about it. Eddie had said his brakes were gone, that he was on the downgrade, that he couldn't see the runaway lane, that he was going too fast. I tried to help, tried to guide him. But had he actually responded to my specific words? Or had he just kept broadcasting his final moments, a looped recording of terror and death? I don't know, I admitted. It felt like a conversation. But maybe he was just repeating himself. The officer nodded. We get at least a dozen reports a year. Drivers hear Eddie's distress call, usually in winter, usually at night. Most try to help. Some report seeing headlights that disappear. Some hear the crash. And every single time we search and find nothing. Because Eddie Morrison died 44 years ago. But his last transmission keeps repeating. The mountains recorded his death. And they play it back, over and over, trapping his final moments in the stone and ice. 2 weeks later, I was talking to another driver at a truck stop in Golden. I mentioned what had happened and he went pale. You heard Eddie too? You've heard him. 3 times. First time was 15 years ago. Same thing, distress call, brake failure, crash. I thought someone was dying. But when I reported it, police told me the same story you got. Eddie Morrison, 1979. Dead for decades, but still broadcasting. Why? Why does it keep happening? The driver shrugged. Some say it's a warning. Eddie trying to save other drivers from his fate. Some say it's just a recording. His death energy burned into the mountain. But I think he's trapped. I think his last moments were so terrifying, so desperate, that they imprinted on reality. And now he's stuck in a loop, dying over and over, forever calling for help that can never come. I've driven Kicking Horse Pass 16 times since that night. I always keep my CB on. And 3 more times, I've heard Eddie Morrison's voice. Always the same words. Always the same terror. Always ending with the crash. The last time was 2 months ago. I tried something different. Instead of trying to help, I keyed my mic and said, Eddie, it's okay. You can rest now. You did everything right. It wasn't your fault. You can stop now. For just a moment, the static cleared, and I heard a different voice. Calm, quiet, exhausted. Thank you. Then silence. I don't know if it was real. I don't know if Eddie Morrison heard me across 44 years of death and repetition. But I like to think he did. I like to think that maybe, just for a moment, he wasn't trapped in his final moments anymore. That he knew someone heard him. Someone tried to help. And someone finally told him it was okay to let go. But 2 weeks ago, another driver reported hearing Eddie's distress call. Same message, same crash, still trapped, still dying, still calling for help on a mountain pass that killed him before I was even born. The Rockies don't let go of their dead easily. And Eddie Morrison will be driving that downgrade, brakes failing, speed increasing, darkness closing in, for as long as trucks run through Kicking Horse Pass, forever calling out, forever dying, forever hoping that this time, Someone will save him. I've been hauling refrigerated freight for 12 years. Everything from frozen food to pharmaceuticals to medical specimens. It's good money, steady work, and the loads are usually lighter than dry freight. But there are downsides. The refrigeration units are loud, they break down in the worst weather, and you're constantly monitoring temperatures to make sure nothing thaws. And there's something deeply unnerving about hauling a 40-foot trailer full of frozen cargo through the winter darkness, especially when you're crossing remote mountain passes where help is hours away. In January of 2023, I picked up a load in Denver, frozen seafood bound for restaurants in Laramie, Wyoming. It was a straightforward run, maybe 4 hours on I-80 through the snowy range. I'd done it 100 times. The load was sealed and manifested at the depot in Denver, and I watched them lock the trailer doors myself. Standard protocol. Once those doors are sealed, they don't open until delivery. The seal number is recorded, and if it's broken, the entire load is rejected. I signed the paperwork, checked my temperatures, -20°C, perfect for frozen goods, and hit the road. It was 9 p.m. when I started west into the mountains. Traffic was light, weather was clear, and I was making good time. Around 11 p.m., somewhere between Walden and Saratoga, my temperature alarm went off. The dashboard display showed the trailer warming up, -15, -10, -5, rising fast. That's a disaster for refrigerated freight. If the temperature goes above zero, the entire load spoils, and I'm liable for thousands of dollars in damages. I pulled onto the shoulder, grabbed my flashlight, and went to check the refrigeration unit. It was running, but barely. The compressor was cycling on and off, struggling. I reset it, watched it stabilize, and checked the temperature readout. It was dropping again, -8, -12, -18. Good. Crisis averted. But standard procedure says I should inspect the cargo to make sure nothing had thawed. I had to break the seal and open the doors. I recorded the seal number, cut it with my knife, and swung open the rear doors. Cold air poured out, that's a good sign. I climbed into the trailer with my flashlight, checking the pallets of seafood boxes. Everything looked fine, still frozen solid, no signs of thawing. I was about to climb back out when my flashlight beam swept across the far end of the trailer, near the front wall. And I saw him. A man was sitting against the wall, slumped to one side, his legs stretched out in front of him. He was wearing a heavy winter coat, dirty jeans, and hiking boots. His head was tilted back, mouth open, beard covered in thick frost. His eyes were half open, frosted over with ice crystals. He was frozen solid, completely, utterly dead. I dropped my flashlight. It clattered on the metal floor, and the beam spun wildly before settling on his face. Gray-blue skin, frost-covered, inhuman. No, 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 no. I scrambled backward, my boots slipping on the icy floor, and fell out of the trailer onto the pavement. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. This is a trucker on I-80 near Walden. I've got a body, a dead man in my trailer, frozen. Send someone, please. The dispatcher asked for my location, my name, my truck number. I gave her everything, my voice cracking with panic. Sir, how did this person get into your trailer? I don't know. The trailer was sealed. It's been sealed since Denver. No one could have gotten in. Sir, when did you last open the trailer? Just now. I've been driving for 2 hours, and the doors have been locked the entire time. Stay with your vehicle. Officers are en route. I sat on the shoulder, flashers on, staring at the open trailer doors. The body was still visible in the darkness, sitting there like some nightmare sculpture. How was this possible? The trailer had been sealed. I'd watched them seal it. I checked the seal number before I left Denver. No one could have gotten inside. The doors were locked from the outside. There were no other entrances, no roof hatches, no hidden panels, just solid aluminum walls and a locked rear door. The Wyoming Highway Patrol arrived 30 minutes later, 2 troopers in a black SUV. I told them everything, showed them the cut seal, the manifest, the timeline. They climbed into the trailer with high-powered flashlights and examined the body. One of them called for the coroner. The other came back to talk to me. "Sir, do you know this individual?" "No. I've never seen him before in my life." "When did you seal this trailer?" 6:30 p.m. in Denver. I watched the warehouse crew seal it. I signed the manifest. The seal was intact until 10 minutes ago when I cut it. The trooper looked skeptical. "And you're saying this man was in your trailer the entire time?" "I don't know. I'm telling you the trailer was sealed. No one could have gotten in." The coroner arrived an hour later, a tired-looking woman in her 50s. She examined the body in the trailer, took photographs, checked for signs of trauma. When she came back out, her expression was grim. "He's been dead for weeks, maybe 2 months. Hypothermia, most likely. Probably a homeless person or drifter who sought shelter and froze to death." "But how did he get in my trailer?" She looked at the trooper, then back at me. "That's a question for law enforcement, not the coroner's office." They identified him later that night. Marcus Delgado, 43. A transient reported missing in November. Last seen in Colorado Springs. That was over 600 miles south of Denver. Over 2 months ago. But according to the coroner, he'd been dead for at least 6 weeks. And somehow, his frozen body had ended up in my trailer, which had been sealed just 3 hours earlier in Denver. The troopers interviewed the warehouse crew in Denver. All of them swore the trailer was empty when they loaded it. Surveillance footage confirmed it. You could see them wheeling pallets into an empty trailer, then sealing and locking the doors. No person, no body, nothing but seafood boxes. The footage was time-stamped and verified. The trailer was empty at 6:15 p.m. I picked it up at 6:30 p.m. The seal was intact. And yet, at 11 p.m., there was a frozen corpse inside. "This is impossible," I told the senior trooper. "There has to be an explanation." He shook his head. "Sir, we've reviewed all the evidence. The trailer was empty when loaded. The seal was intact when you cut it. The doors were locked. And yet there's a body inside that's been dead for 2 months. We have no explanation." "Are you saying he was never alive in that trailer? That he just appeared?" "I'm saying the evidence doesn't make sense. And I'm saying this isn't the first time something like this has happened on this route." He pulled out a file folder. 3 years ago, a driver reported finding a frozen body in a sealed refrigerated trailer near Rollins. Same situation. Trailer was empty when loaded, sealed doors, no way for anyone to get inside. But when the driver opened it, there was a body, dead for weeks, never explained. And before that, 5 years ago, same highway, same type of trailer, frozen body, no explanation. And if you go back through the records, you'll find at least a dozen similar incidents over the last 30 years. Always in winter, always on I-80 through Wyoming, always refrigerated trailers, and always bodies that have been dead for weeks, appearing in trailers that were provably empty hours earlier. I felt sick. "What are you saying? That this highway is haunted?" "I'm saying there's something wrong with this stretch of road, something that doesn't follow normal rules. Truckers have been reporting strange things for decades. Voices on the CB, phantom hitchhikers, equipment failures that can't be explained. And sometimes the dead appear in places they shouldn't be. I don't have an answer. I just know it keeps happening." They released me 6 hours later, after processing the scene and taking my full statement. The seafood load was rejected. Contaminated crime scene. I drove home empty, my mind racing. How does a man who died 2 months ago in Colorado Springs end up in a trailer that was sealed 3 hours ago in Denver? How does a frozen corpse appear in a locked container with no possible point of entry? I couldn't stop thinking about it. I did my own research, digging through old news articles and trucker forums. And I found them, story after story of drivers finding frozen bodies in sealed trailers. Always the same details. Always on remote highways in winter. Always bodies that had been dead for far longer than the timeline allowed. And always the bodies were transients, homeless people, drifters. People who'd frozen to death alone, unmissed, unclaimed. One forum post caught my attention. It was from a driver named Bill Thompson. Posted in 2007. Found a frozen body in my reefer trailer last night near Rock Springs. Cops said he'd been dead for a month, but my trailer was empty 6 hours ago. I think I know what's happening. I think the cold is collecting them. I think when people freeze to death alone, the cold takes them, stores them, and then deposits them in places where they'll be found. Refrigerated trailers are the perfect place. Cold enough to preserve them, mobile enough to cross state lines, and eventually someone opens the doors. I think the cold wants them to be found, wants them to be identified, wants someone to know they existed. That's the only explanation that makes sense. I don't know if Bill Thompson was right. I don't know if the cold is some kind of conscious force that collects frozen bodies and redistributes them. But I know what I saw. Marcus Delgado was in my trailer, frozen solid, dead for 2 months, in a container that had been verifiably empty 3 hours earlier. And I know he's not the only one. Somewhere out there, in the frozen mountains and remote highways of the American West, there are more bodies waiting to be found. More drifters who froze to death alone, whose final resting place is a mystery, until one night a trucker opens a sealed trailer and finds them sitting there, frost-covered and silent, delivered by something we don't understand. I quit refrigerated freight 3 months later. I couldn't do it anymore. Every time I opened a trailer, every time I checked the cargo, I expected to see another frozen face staring back at me. Another impossible body in an impossible place. I haul dry freight now, lumber, machinery, consumer goods. Nothing that requires refrigeration. Nothing that stays frozen. Because I know the truth now. The cold takes people. And sometimes it gives them back. Not to the places they died, but to the places where they'll be found, identified, and remembered. Marcus Delgado's family held a funeral 4 weeks after I found him. They'd been searching for him since November. They thought he was still alive, maybe in California or Texas, just out of touch. Finding his body gave them closure. Horrible closure, but closure nonetheless. And maybe that's the point. Maybe Bill Thompson was right. Maybe the cold isn't evil. Maybe it's just doing the only thing it can. Making sure the forgotten are remembered, the lost are found, and the dead are finally laid to rest. But I'll never forget the sight of Marcus Delgado sitting in my trailer, frosted and frozen, staring at nothing with ice-covered eyes. And I'll never forget the impossible truth. He appeared in a sealed container, delivered by forces we can't explain, carried by the cold itself. The mountains and the highways and the winter darkness, they have rules we don't understand. And sometimes they show us things that shouldn't exist. Things that died alone and were given one final journey, one last chance to be seen. The cold takes, but sometimes, in its own strange mercy, the cold also gives back. The Eisenhower Tunnel in Colorado is an engineering marvel, 2 parallel bores cutting through the Continental Divide at 11,158 feet elevation. It's the highest vehicular tunnel in North America, over a mile long, and it handles tens of thousands of vehicles every day. I've driven through it hundreds of times, hauling freight between Denver and the ski towns on the western slope. It's just a tunnel, concrete walls, orange lights, ventilation fans, and a steady stream of traffic. Nothing special, nothing unusual, until March of 2023, when I drove through it alone during a snowstorm and came out the other side with something following me. It was 2 a.m., and I was eastbound with a load of restaurant equipment, heading back to Denver after a delivery in Vail. A late-season blizzard had moved in that evening, and I-70 was down to 1 lane in each direction. Traffic had dropped to almost nothing. Most drivers had pulled off to wait out the storm, but I had a morning delivery deadline, and the tunnel was still open. I figured I could make it through and get ahead of the worst weather. I entered the westbound bore. At that hour, they sometimes reverse one tunnel for two-way traffic during maintenance. The tunnel was empty, just me and the orange lights stretching into the distance, reflecting off the wet pavement. The sound of my engine echoed off the concrete walls, and the ventilation fans created a steady white noise. Halfway through, I glanced at my passenger side mirror, just a routine check, and I saw headlights behind me. Another truck, maybe a quarter mile back, following me through the tunnel. I felt a surge of relief, company in the storm, another driver making the same gamble. I slowed slightly to let them catch up. Maybe we could convoy through the worst of the weather. But the headlights didn't get closer. They maintained the exact same distance, matching my speed perfectly. I slowed more. They slowed. I sped up. They sped up. Always the same distance. Always perfectly synchronized. Strange, but not alarming. Maybe they were using me as a pacer, following my lights through the storm. I focused on driving, watching the tunnel walls slide past, counting down the distance to the exit. Another quarter mile. Then I saw the exit ahead. The gray light of the storm beyond. Snow swirling in the tunnel mouth. I drove out into the blizzard, my wipers immediately struggling against the heavy snow. I checked my mirror. The headlights were gone. The tunnel behind me was empty. No truck. No lights. Nothing. I radioed back. Westbound traffic, this is eastbound hauler just exiting Eisenhower. Did anyone else just come through? Static. I tried again. Any trucks in the tunnel? I thought I saw someone behind me. Nothing. The CB was dead. Not broken, just silent. No chatter. No response. I was alone on the highway, visibility down to maybe 50 feet. Snow piling up on the shoulders. I drove on, pushing through the storm, but something felt wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone, that something had followed me out of the tunnel. When I got home the next morning, I downloaded my dashcam footage, front and rear cameras, high definition, running continuously. I wanted to see the truck that had been following me. I needed to confirm I hadn't imagined it. I watched the footage from the tunnel. The front camera showed exactly what I remembered, me entering the tunnel, driving through, exiting into the storm. Normal, uneventful. But when I switched to the rear camera, my blood went cold. The rear view showed the tunnel stretching behind me, orange lights receding into the distance. But there were no headlights, no truck following me. The tunnel was completely empty. I'd been alone the entire time. But I saw headlights in my mirror. I know I did. I rewound the footage and watched again, this time focusing on the mirror itself, visible in the edge of the rear camera frame. And that's when I saw her. In the reflection in my passenger side mirror, just barely visible in the dashcam footage, there was someone sitting in my passenger seat. A woman. Pale skin, dark hair, wearing what looked like a gray or white dress. She was sitting perfectly still, staring straight ahead. Not at me, but at the camera, at the road ahead. And she was there for the entire length of the tunnel, almost a mile, sitting beside me, but my passenger seat was empty. I was alone in the cab. I watched the footage 5 more times, zooming in, enhancing the image. It was definitely a woman, definitely in my passenger seat, but only in the reflection. When the front camera panned slightly and caught a glimpse of the actual passenger seat, it was empty. She existed only in the mirror, only in the reflection, and when I exited the tunnel, she vanished. The reflection showed an empty seat. She was gone. I didn't sleep that day. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Who was she? What was she? And why was she only visible in the reflection? I started researching the Eisenhower Tunnel, looking for accidents, deaths, ghost stories, and I found something that made my hands shake. In 1982, during the construction of the ventilation system, a woman named Patricia Morrison died in a car accident inside the tunnel. Her car had stalled, and she was struck by a semi-truck. She died instantly. According to the reports, she'd been trying to drive to Denver during a snowstorm, against the advice of Highway Patrol. She was 34 years old. She was wearing a white dress. She'd been coming from a wedding in Vail. I found a photograph of Patricia Morrison in a news archive, and I recognized her. The same pale skin, the same dark hair, the same face I'd seen in my passenger seat reflection. She was the woman in my mirror. She'd been sitting beside me, invisible except in reflection, for the entire length of the tunnel. The tunnel where she died. The tunnel where she was trying to get through during a storm, just like I was. I asked other drivers if they'd ever experienced anything strange in the Eisenhower Tunnel. Most laughed it off. But one old-timer, a guy named Ray who'd been driving Colorado routes for 40 years, pulled me aside. "You saw her," didn't you? Who? The woman in the mirror. The reflection. Patricia Morrison. She's been hitching rides through that tunnel since 1982. But you only see her in mirrors. Never directly. Only reflections.